Hi everyone, we are going to continue reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. We are on chapter 11. It's called The Miracle. Let's get started. Charlie entered the store and laid the damp dollar bill on the counter. "One Wonka's Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mellow Delight," he said, remembering how much he had loved the one he had had on his birthday. The man behind the counter looked fat and well fed. He had big lips and fat cheeks and a very fat neck. The fat around his neck bulged out all around the top of his collar like a rubber ring. He turned and reached behind him for the candy bar. Here's a picture. Then he turned back and he handed it to Charlie. Charlie grabbed it and quickly tore off the wrapper, and he took an enormous bite. Then he took another, and the joy of being able to cram large pieces of something sweet and solid into one's mouth. The sheer blissful joy of being able to fill one's mouth with rich, solid food. "Oh, you look like you wanted that one, Sonny," the shopkeeper said pleasantly. Charlie nodded, his mouth bulging with chocolate. The shopkeeper put Charlie's change on the counter. "Take it easy," he said. "It'll give you a gut ache if you swallow it like that without chewing." Charlie went on wolfing the candy. He couldn't stop. And in less than half a minute, the whole thing had disappeared down his throat. He was quite out of breath, but he felt marvelously, extraordinarily happy. He reached out a hand to take the change, then he paused. His eyes were just above the level of the counter. They were staring at the little silver coins lying there. The coins were all dimes. There were 9 of them altogether. Surely it wouldn't matter if he spent just one more. "I think," he said quietly, "I think I'll have just one more of those candy bars, the same kind as before, please." "Why not?" the fat shopkeeper said, reaching behind him and taking another Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mellow Delight from the shelf. He laid it on the counter. Charlie picked it up and tore off the wrapper, and suddenly, from underneath the wrapper, there came a brilliant flash of gold. Charlie's heart stood still. "It's a golden ticket!" screamed the shopkeeper, leaping about a foot in the air. "You've got a golden ticket! You found the last golden ticket! Hey, what do you know? Come and look at this, everybody! The kids found Wonka's golden ticket, the last one. There it is. It's right there in his hands." And it seemed as though the shopkeeper might be going to have a fit. "In my shop, too," he yelled. "He found it right here in my own little shop. Somebody call the newspapers quick and let them know. Watch out now, Sonny. Don't tear it up as you unwrap it. That thing is precious." And in just a few seconds, there was a crowd of about 20 people clustering around Charlie, and many more were pushing their way in from the street. Everybody wanted to get a look at the golden ticket and at the lucky finder. "Where is it?" somebody shouted. "Hold it up so all of us can see it." "There it is," someone else shouted. "He's holding it in his hands. See the gold shining?" "How did he manage to find it, I'd like to know?" a large boy shouted angrily. 20 bars a day I've been buying for weeks and weeks." "Oh, think of all the free stuff he'll be getting too," another boy said enviously. "A lifetime supply." "He'll need it, the skinny little shrimp," a girl said, laughing. Charlie hadn't moved. He hadn't even unwrapped the golden ticket from around the candy bar. He was standing very still, holding it tightly with both hands while the crowd pushed and shouted all around him. He felt quite dizzy. There was a peculiar floating sensation coming over him, as though he were floating up in the air like a balloon. His feet didn't seem to be touching the ground at all. He could hear his heart thumping away loudly somewhere in his throat. At that point, he became aware of a hand resting lightly on his shoulder, and when he looked up, he saw a tall man standing over him. "Listen," the man whispered, "I'll buy it from you. I'll give you $50. How about that, eh? And I'll give you a new bicycle as well, okay?" "Are you crazy?" shouted one woman who was standing equally close. "Why, I'd give him $500 for that ticket. You want to sell it for $500, young man?" "That's quite enough of that," the fat shopkeeper shouted, pushing his way through the crowd and taking Charlie firmly by the hand. "Leave this kid alone, will you? Make way there, let him out." And to Charlie, as he led him to the door, he whispered, "Don't let anybody have it. Take it straight home quickly before you lose it. Run all the way and don't stop till you get there. You understand?" And Charlie nodded. "You know something," the fat shopkeeper said, pausing a moment and smiling at Charlie. "I have a feeling you needed a little break like this. I'm awfully glad you got it. Good luck to you, Sonny." "Well, thank you," Charlie said, and off he went, running through the snow as fast as his little legs would go. And as he flew past Mr. Willy Wonka's factory, he turned and waved at it, and he sang out, "I'll be seeing you! I'll be seeing you soon!" And 5 minutes later, he arrived at his very own home. All right, friends, that was the end of chapter 11. Did you guys like that? Charlie found the last golden ticket. I'm so excited for him. Let's see what the next chapter is called. Ooh, chapter 12 is called What It Said on the Golden Ticket. Let's get started. Charlie burst through the front door shouting, "Mother! Mother! Mother!" Mrs. Bucket went into the old grandparents' room, serving them their evening soup. "Mother!" yelled Charlie, rushing in like a hurricane. "Look, I've got it. Look, Mother, look! The last golden ticket. It's mine. I found some money in the street, and I bought 2 candy bars, and the second one had the golden ticket, and there were crowds of people all around me wanting to buy it, and the shopkeeper rescued me, and I ran all the way home, and here I am. It's the 5th golden ticket, Mother, and I've found it." Mrs. Bucket simply just stood and stared while the 4 old grandparents who were sitting up in bed balancing bowls of soup on their laps all dropped their spoons with a clatter, and they froze against their pillows. For about 10 seconds, there was absolute silence in the room. Nobody dared to speak or to move. It was a magic moment. Then, very softly, Grandpa Joe said, "Well, you're pulling our legs, Charlie, aren't you? You're having a little joke." "No, I'm not," cried Charlie, rushing up to the bed and holding out the large and beautiful golden ticket for him to see. Grandpa Joe leaned forward and he took a close look, his nose almost touching the ticket. The others watched him, waiting for the verdict. And here you guys go, just so you know, in the book they do have a picture of the golden ticket. Here's what it looks like. Grandpa Joe leaned forward and took a close look, his nose almost touching the ticket, and the others watched him, waiting for the verdict. Then, very slowly, with a slow and marvelous grin spreading all over his face, Grandpa Joe lifted his head and he looked straight at Charlie. The color was rushing to his cheeks and his eyes were wide open, shining with joy. And in the center of each eye, right in the very center, in the black pupil, a little spark of wild excitement was slowly dancing. Then the old man took a deep breath, and suddenly, with no warning whatsoever, an explosion seemed to take place inside of him. He threw up his arms. There's the picture. And he yelled, "Yippee!" And at the same time, his long, bony body rose up out of the bed and his bowl of soup went flying into the face of Grandma Josephine, and in one fantastic leap, this old fellow of 96 and a half, who hadn't been out of bed these last 20 years, jumped onto the floor and started doing a dance of victory in his pajamas. Yippee! He shouted. 3 cheers for Charlie. Hip, hip, hooray! And at this point, the door opened, and Mr. Bucket walked into the room. He was cold and tired, and he looked it. All day long, he had been shoveling snow in the streets. Cripeys, he cried. Well, what's going on in here? And it didn't take long for them to tell him what had happened. Well, I don't believe it, he said. It's not possible. Show him the ticket, Charlie, shouted Grandpa Joe, who was still dancing around the floor like a dervish in his striped pajamas. Show your father the 5th and the last golden ticket in the world. Let me see it, Charlie, Mr. Bucket said, collapsing onto a chair and holding out his hand. Charlie came forward with the precious document. It was a beautiful thing, this golden ticket, having been made, so it seemed, from a sheet of pure hammered out almost to the thinness of paper. On one side of it, printed by some clever method of jet black letters, was the invitation itself from Mr. Wonka. Read it aloud, said Grandpa Joe, climbing back into bed again at last. Let's hear exactly what it says. Mr. Bucket held the golden ticket up close to his eyes. His hands were trembling slightly, and he seemed to be overcome by this whole business. He took several deep breaths, then he cleared his throat, and he said, All right, I'll read it. Here we go. Greetings to you, the lucky finder of this golden ticket, from Mr. Wonka. I shake you warmly by the hand. Tremendous things are in store for you. Many wonderful surprises await you. For now, I do invite you to come to my factory and be my guest for one whole day. You and all others who are lucky enough to find my golden tickets. I, Willy Wonka, will conduct you around the factory myself, showing you everything that there is to see. And afterwards, when it is time to leave, you will be escorted home by a procession of large trucks. These trucks, I can promise you, will be loaded with enough delicious edibles to last you and your entire household for many years. If at any time, therefore, you should run out of supplies, you only have to come back to the factory and show this golden ticket, and I shall be happy to refill your cupboard with whatever you want. In this way, you will be able to keep yourself supplied with tasty morsels for the rest of your life. But this is by no means the most exciting thing that will happen on the day of your visit. I am preparing other surprises that are even more marvelous and more fantastic for you and for all my beloved golden ticket holders. Mystic and marvelous surprises that will entrance, delight, intrigue, astonish, and perplex you beyond measure. In your wildest dreams, you could not imagine that such things could happen to you. Just wait and see. And now, here are your instructions. The day I have chosen for the visit is the first day on the month of February. On this day and on no other, you must come to the factory gates at 10 o'clock sharp in the morning. Don't be late, and you are allowed to bring with you either 1 or 2 members of your own family to look after you and to ensure that you don't get into mischief. One more thing, be sure to have this ticket with you. Otherwise, you will not be admitted. Signed, Willy Wonka. All right, friends, that is where we are going to end today. We are in the middle of chapter 12, what it says on the golden tickets. We will continue reading it tomorrow, but you guys all say done, 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 and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.